Welcome back to DONSLIFE and welcome to the channel. This is my 2021 GMC Sierra AT4 and this is our 2022 Cadillac Escalade Sport Platinum. And both have the 6.2 liter L87 engines. So today I want to talk to you about a report that caught my attention, and this was a video that I didn't really plan on making, but I just can't get it out of my head. So we're going to have a discussion today. Specifically, from GM Authority, they say that the 2027 Silverado Sierra engines, GM is taking steps to improve quality and reliability. They're specifically talking about the new generation of engines for the 2027 models and beyond. I just want to make an important distinction. This is not a GM press release. This is not an official announcement. This is reporting based on sources familiar with the matter. But honestly, it's not the article itself that interests me. Now, call me an optimist, but does this suggest just how seriously GM may be taking the fallout from the L87 situation? Has GM learned from everything that's happened, or is this just more damage control? Well, we're going to talk about it. Let's go. Now, if this article came out 5 years ago, I don't think anybody would care. And why would I say that? Well, quality control stories don't usually generate a lot of interest, but engine failures do, recalls do, NHTSA investigations do, and owner frustration does. The L87 story has become one of the most discussed GM truck topics in years. I'm living it right now with both of my vehicles, one officially recalled, one under investigation, and one of those out of warranty. We've seen recall activity, lawsuits, oil specification changes, engine replacement stories, and of course, owner complaints, all of which I've covered extensively in my previous videos. So whether your truck or SUV has issues or not, trust has definitely been affected. And I think that's why I can't stop thinking about this article. It touches directly on the question owners are asking. Did GM really change anything? Now, I tried to research sources for this article, but I wasn't able to find any. It's just sources familiar with the matter. Now, I have no reason to believe that the article is false in any way. I'm just not able to find the sources of this information, but usually GM Authority is pretty good with the information that they put out there. I'll link the full article in the video description below, but really the first paragraph talks about the launch of the next generation V8 small blocks that are going to come out for these trucks, and verbatim, however, despite growing anticipation for the next generation 2027 Silverado and Sierra, GM also faces a challenge that extends beyond performance and capability numbers, namely restoring confidence among buyers concerned about engine reliability. The second paragraph summarizes what most of us already know is that GM's bread and butter 6.2 liter V8 L87 gasoline engine has faced heightened scrutiny over the last few years as a result of a high-profile recall and unrelated valve lifter related issues. The sentence that got my attention was this one here. Now GM Authority has learned that General Motors is taking deliberate steps to ensure that the next generation 2027 Silverado and Sierra deliver higher levels of quality and durability from the outset. Goes on to say that according to sources familiar with the matter, the automaker is implementing tighter quality control procedures on several key engine components for the new Gen 6 small block. In addition, some critical parts and processes are reportedly being brought in-house rather than relying on outside suppliers, a move intended to provide greater oversight of manufacturing consistency and component quality. I do like the sound of that, and we'll talk about why in a moment. I'm not really sure how I feel about this next sentence, and some of you I'm sure are with me. With its next generation truck program representing one of the company's most important product launches of the decade, it should come as no surprise that ensuring the durability of the new power plants has become a major priority. How do we ascertain that? How do we know that it is a major priority when the tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of customers right now that are affected by the current recall feel that the service levels or the experience has been unsatisfactory or at minimum subpar? I can see how they're backing up some of the claims with this statement here. The engines will be supported by substantial manufacturing investments across North America GM has already announced major funding commitments for facilities including the Tonawanda Propulsion in New York, the Flint engine operations in Michigan, the Saginaw metal casting operations, and the St. Catharines propulsion plant in Ontario in support of the new small block. And that's the end of the article. So I wanted to take it a step further and go on a bit of a journey into the past to just try and understand what this is saying and some of the information that's public, that's out there, that helps confirm and maybe prop this up to be true, which I hope it is. So let's separate the facts from the reporting. First, GM has publicly committed an enormous amount of money towards the future of V8 engines. That's public knowledge. I'm actually on news.gm.com. I'll link this in the video description below, so you can definitely reference it for yourself. So GM has committed this. This isn't speculation. This is fact. In May 2025, GM announced an $888 million investment into the Tonawanda propulsion plant. That investment supports production of GM's 6th generation V8 engines, the new ones that are around the corner. Then GM Canada announced another major investment, approximately $691 million Canadian dollars, into the St. Catharines plant. So that's like $2,000. Kidding. With exchange, it's probably more like $500 million US, just an estimate. But this investment, again, is for future V8 production. Companies don't spend this kind of money accidentally. GM is clearly signaling that V8 trucks remain extremely important, especially the Silverado, especially the Sierra, and especially the large SUVs. But this is where you might find things interesting. Look at this timeline. So GM faces recall scrutiny, the NHTSA attention, customer frustration, then massive investments into the future V8 production. That's why I don't think the most important question is the article true? I think the better question is, would this make sense? And the answer is yes, absolutely, especially from a business standpoint. If you're GM leadership, would you launch an entirely new generation of V8 engine without increasing quality oversight? I wouldn't. Not after all the negative attention that the L87 has received to date. The next generation of GM truck engines may end up being the most heavily scrutinized engines that have ever launched. That's what's going through my mind. Am I a next generation GM truck customer? If you would ask me that 3-4 years ago, I would have said yes. Now, I have to really think. So if we jump back to the GM Authority article, here's where we need to be fair. The article references tighter quality control, manufacturing oversight, and reliability-focused changes. These details are not currently backed up by public GM documentation, at least not that I've been able to find, and that's important, so we shouldn't treat reporting from unnamed sources the same as official engineering releases. However, just because something isn't publicly confirmed doesn't automatically make it false. It simply means that we should separate the confirmed information from the reported information. That's how you and me can avoid getting emotionally attached to any rumors. Going back to the part about more critical parts and processes reportedly being brought back in-house, I really hope that that's true. We learned early on in the recall, and I reported on this about 2 years ago now, that GM had discovered outsourced manufacturing where those parts were then brought in for assembly and they were out of spec. And somewhere in that process, quality control wasn't double checked before the parts were installed. So fingers crossed, if I was a GM customer in the next generation trucks or SUVs, I sure hope that this is true. I think many people are focused on whether the article is right, myself included, but I'm also worried about the vehicles that I currently own. And what about all the people buying 2026s right now? Those have the L87s in them, and you're hearing about L87s failing pretty much right off the lot. Brand new models, 2026. I've driven by my local dealerships, Silverados, Sierras. They're stacked right now, moving these trucks at 0% interest, so there's some really good deals out there. You can get an AT4X now for 0%. That's something you couldn't get when that truck was first introduced, at least not in my area. As hopeful and as optimistic as I want to be about this article, to me, the bigger story is, has GM finally understood what many owners have been saying, and that reliability is now part of the brand conversation? It's not about the horsepower or the torque anymore. It's not about big screens, less screens, more buttons, less buttons. Owners like me, we want confidence. We want durability. Owners like me want to know that if we buy a truck and take care of it, that it's going to last us for many years to come, maybe decades. No, I'm also realistic. I know that nobody manufactures vehicles these days that are meant to last for decades. I guess owners like me just need to know that GM won't repeat the same mistakes with this new generation. I don't know what your thoughts are, but do you think GM can deliver that? That's the question. So just to wrap up that article, I find it interesting. I think there's some claims that still need to be verified. I think for General Motors as a business, this direction does make sense. They need to rebuild trust in their customer. Now, based on the comments that you've left on many of my videos in the past, some of you, I know that trust has been completely eroded. Could they win you back? If the launch of the next generation pickups and the power plants in them is a huge success, would you go back? GM does have too much at stake when it comes to the launch of these new engines. And if they fail, then this conversation that we've been having, not me directed to you, but just about the subject matter, it's going to get really messy if it's not there already. So what do you think? Has GM learned from the L87 situation? Or do you think truck owners are going to be very skeptical until these new engines prove themselves in the real world? Drop your comments down below and let's see how people feel. Like I said, I didn't really plan on making this video. I will also link a couple more articles down below that I also looked at when I was putting my thoughts together to do this video for you. And on that note, if you like the updates from these videos, hit that like button to support the channel. Please consider subscribing if you haven't already, and we'll talk to you next time.